Hi, everyone. Tonight, I'm really pleased to be sharing with you about virtual reality. For those of you who know me, know that I love virtual reality. And I really think it's a tool which as teachers, we could be using so much more. It's just an incredible platform and a space where we can be exposing children into learning contexts that we can't easily do, or taking them into spaces which is not safe to go. There are just so many benefits of using VR. I'm joined tonight by Barend Jansen van Vuuren. Did I get that right? Or is it Jansen van Vuuren? Jansen van Vuuren. I'm so sorry, Barend. So tonight I'm joined by Barend Jansen van Vuuren. And Barend is an incredible entrepreneur who has gone out and created MetaVR in South Africa for a range of different aspects. Welcome, Barend. I am so sorry.
That's perfect. Most people get it incorrect, and I've kind of been used to it, so it's all good. Thank you very much, Karen, for having me on, and yeah, good evening to everybody who's watching.
So tell us a bit, where did this MetaVR come from?
So MetaVR is a little brainchild that I came up with during COVID. So my background, I'm actually an airline pilot who've been in the aviation industry for almost 15 years. And during COVID, with the lack of flying, it's given me the opportunity to share a passion that I've always had, which is teaching. So in aviation perspective, we've always been exposed to good technology for educational purposes. And one of them is something like a simulator, and where the simulator kind of replicates environment that we can't necessarily replicate in real life. It's a great opportunity to bring VR into the normal education systems. So I thought the technology is there. It seems people are ready. And yeah, MetaVR grew through what it is now.
So tell us about the technology people would need to use MetaVR. What's the hardware kind of stuff that they would need?
Okay, so just for people that don't really know what virtual reality is about, there's two types. There's desktop VR, which a lot of people have been exposed to, desktop simulations where you look into a virtual world, but now it's just a screen. So
like
you
can a 3D perspective is what you're moving around in.
Yes, yeah. So it's computer generated, and by looking at a screen, you can access the content. So that's desktop VR. Then what has happened now is technology has evolved into being able to create immersive VR. So immersive VR means that it is multimodal in nature, which means that we can kind of access more than just looking at a screen. So we use 360 visuals as well as head-mounted displays, which I'll show you now. And then also it's got speakers or auditory stimulation. And also you can get a little bit more extra propriety or proprioception of using controls. So it's an extension of your hands. So you get that feeling of being inside of a virtual world. So that's where we are lying in within that immersive virtual reality rather than a normal virtual reality. So to answer your question, we're using the Quest 2, which I'm sure some people are familiar with. The Quest 2, I'll just quickly show you, is a headset or head-mounted display, which is connected with a head strap. And what we've done is we've added a battery pack to the back.
Ah, so clever.
Extra time. So I'll quickly demonstrate to you what it looks like when you go into virtual reality. So you have a headset.
So you're not connected to a computer. So the software that you're using is in the headset?
That's it, yeah. So you've got two controllers, which becomes an extension of your limbs. And there's also a new update coming, which will give your bottom limbs actually also
Oh,
a
wow.
sense of perception, so you can actually see the bottom. So yet again, yeah, like you said, this system is completely untethered or not connected to any type of
Nice.
computer or other hardware, where in previous instances of the technology, it had to be connected to quite strong computers, which does all the programming or the processing. On this device, you've got cameras, which in previous versions you had to mount in a room to give you
Yes.
that sense of where you are. So
Yes.
these constantly send out signals so that it can pick up where you are. So it completely immerses you within the experience that you want to be in.
So I know when we were playing this afternoon with the VR, you were talking about avatars. So do you want to tell people what avatars are and then show us your avatar?
All right. So Avatar is not only just a movie that came out in like 2009, which the majority of people watched. It's a little bit more than that. So avatars come more and more into play in our daily lives. You can think of an avatar as whatever you post online. Let's say, for instance, the perception of what people see of you. So that can be a Facebook account if you want to think about it like that. You choosing what to share, or it can be a little bit more immersive, like an overlay. So what I've done is I've created an overlay that will stick onto my face, which will make it a little bit more appealing to look at tonight.
Ah,
And the avatar for me for tonight will look like this. So
so hello, Barend, the avatar.
how's it? So yeah, we're playing a little bit more with now augmented reality, which is
Yes,
also an interesting thing. So overlaying content into what is already there compared to virtual reality where it's completely computer generated. So that's
makes
yet again just a small difference between those two concepts.
So if we now think about the MetaVR and what you're offering schools, do you want to explain what happens when you go to a school, or are you expecting schools to buy the headsets? What is the process in terms of engagement with schools?
So before we get to kind of how it works, let's explain a little bit more about what the content is about, and then we can talk about how schools can utilize these tools and
Great.
then dig into those. So I'll give you a little bit of theory about this, just to explain to people that aren't familiar with the concepts.
Mhm.
So by using this technology, there's three categories of virtual reality, specifically in education. Now, these form part of either games, simulations, or virtual worlds. So we know that the easiest way for anyone to learn is by making it fun and making a game out of it, which gives them a sense of wanting to excel quickly. So
Okay.
in terms of games, you can test hypothesis, you can achieve specific goals, elicit motivation, and then it's learning through the immersion of the experience that the student will actually gain confidence with whatever he's been exposed to. Simulations we've always had, and to kind of connect that to flying, I mean, flying simulations has been around for generations now, but now we're able to create these simulations and making it easy and accessible for people to interact with it. And we'll look at it a little bit more in detail later, but there's things like a firefighting simulator or CPR simulations, which put you in that perspective of being in that situation and then having to learn as well as remember how it works. And then
And I
lastly, virtual worlds. Yeah.
And I think that's really important in terms of the virtual spaces, both those examples that you spoke about, because the VR is being used in terms of training people for dangerous situations. So I know that one of the universities here in Johannesburg was actually speaking about their virtual simulation in terms of teaching miners how to actually set up a blast space. And so therefore you can teach them how to do that without the person getting hurt if there happens to be a wiring or things like that. So I think there's a huge potential for that in a range of different ways. I know a while ago I was walking on top of a container, I mean, not a container, one of those big tanker trucks, and it was to teach people how to actually reload the content. So you had to unscrew these big caps, and I'm not really good with heights. And so it was really like incredible having to open up the top, remove the lid, find the container to put it in, and all that kind of stuff. So training where somebody could get hurt, that they're not getting hurt, I think is a really valuable one.
No, 100% agreed. I think also, I mean, you had to go previously to a specific site, which the facility was capable of doing that training, like firefighting or whatever the case might be, where now you can actually just create a little classroom and you can just do the training in there. So that takes time away. It takes the cost of fuel or petrol, there's so many different things that adds onto it, not only just the experience, but everything in general. To give you a stat, I mean, in 2019, in the UK, 96% of universities were already using augmented and virtual reality. And I think that shows us how far behind kind of we are trailing slightly at this stage, especially within a schooling system where, I mean, a lot of people haven't been exposed to it just due to the cost. But I mean, now's the time for people to start using it as a tool so that the students and the teachers can benefit from it, definitely. Yeah.
So let's start showing the teachers sort of ideas of what they might experience. So I know you've prepared a whole lot of little videos of what these experiences would look like. Sure. Would you like to begin with the CAD, the gravity sketch? Would that be good?
Before you press play, I just want to give a slight introduction to that, to give context. So when I was in school, we still used to do technical drawing with pen and paper. And I mean, it was my passion and I loved it. I wanted to become an architect because of it. But we then got slowly exposed to a CAD, computer-aided design, in terms of using a computer. And now the technology has actually grown to such an extent that we can now enter into virtual reality and do that type of designs as well. So you can go ahead and press play.
Okay, so this is it. Do you want to explain what's happening?
Yeah, so you're using two controllers basically to create the content, and the world is your oyster. You can create anything. People are using this for not only like architect, but also for fashion. They're creating hardware like a drill, which you'll see they're busy creating now, and also doing smaller things like stuff that you can export to be 3D printed, like let's say a chair. Even the guys are designing cars and interiors and everything. So, I mean, the more exposure that, number one, the teachers will have to this, the better they will utilize it as a tool to use it to teach the students. So, I mean, it's just the added value to it. So that's a quite great one to have or to know. We were using it, and we've got a couple of modules where we're teaching kids how to create earphones, which we then could export. And if people know what NFTs are, you can even export this content as an NFT, which can be sold and so on. So it becomes very valuable within the next generation workspaces.
And also you spoke about how downloading the models and actually 3D printing them. So you could
Yes.
make the actual physical model as well, which is really great. And then they can see physically, are there any adjustments they need to make to their design?
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, the big companies are already using the technology like the AutoCADs and SketchUp and all those big names have plugins where you can use the device connected to the program, and then, I mean, do that editing within the already generated software that you have here.
Yeah, so I think that's really important in terms of how we can engage with the children from a different point of view, and also putting them into spaces that they wouldn't be able to experience if they weren't in VR. Because there you would only see it in 2D and you would have to build a 3D model. Whereas now they can be immersed into that 3D model around what they're doing. I think that's really great.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it also helps to be in a space where you don't necessarily normally are in. So, to give you an example, some people struggle to see 3D. Now, imagine you have to design 3D on a piece of
Yes.
paper using a pencil and a ruler. So now you can actually draw that cube and look around it so that it gives you that sense of dimension rather than just drawing on a piece of paper and hoping it's all the lines are straight.
That's true.
Yeah,
I know you've got a piece about art, and one of the
yes,
VR experiences I truly loved, and if I'd had the opportunity, probably wouldn't have climbed out, was Tilt Brush. So
yes,
Tilt Brush was where you were designing in 3D, and what I loved about that art program is I was actually drawing the art all around myself, and I could actually climb into my art, which was something you can't do when you're
yes,
working in a physical space unless you're making a huge big model
exactly.
that you then have to climb into. Can we show people the art version?
Yeah, definitely. Now, imagine how much it would cost for all this paint. But using this as a tool, you can put the students within that space and give them free roam so that they can use any color. I mean, all the CYMK colors, all the different type of brushes, or using different brush strokes. So you're not limiting with what you have in the classroom. You're actually exposing them to a lot more than what we are able to give. Now, in a normal environment, you can look at paint drying. So how quickly can we use this bucket of paint before it dries? Now, there's unlimited amount of paint that the students can use. So you can just imagine them making their little model or their design and just starting from fresh and taking a photo, exporting that as a JPEG, maybe getting it printed, printing it onto a frame, taking it home. So yeah, it's not just getting dirty in the classroom and then hoping for the best. It's quite nice. Yeah.
I mean, and I think what I like too with the examples of the videos you've shown is that you've got subjects like maths and language. So I'm going to pop in the maths one.
Yeah. So you can imagine how boring it is to do math normally. So you can punch out the sums, get some of that energy out, as well as learning your division, multiplication, subtraction, or addition, all those ones, as well as making it a game. So you can see there's a leaderboard. So, playing against other kids also is positive reinforcement of trying to be better at something, even though it's for some not necessarily the most exhilarating thing to do, but getting that energy out is a new way of learning. And the quicker you do it, the better you get. So it kind of ties in with older ways of thinking. So if you think about the way that we normally kind of gauge a student's understanding, it's either by writing an exam, or how quickly they can get something done, or how well they can remember what they were taught. So what we have at this stage is we're teaching the known to the kind of known. You're going through aspects of like math being a known and doing it in virtual reality, but in future, there would be a lot more complex systems that will delve into the actual psyche of the person and teach them skills of understanding who they are, or compassion for other people. There's a quick example I'll share with you. Is there's one of the things that we have is showing someone, it's called Notes on Blindness. So you put the device on, and it takes you through the process of someone actually going blind.
Oh, wow.
And it teaches that compassion of how does it feel? Because now you fully immersed, so it actually does feel in the end as if you are there, and if you're going through that yourself. So, I mean, how can we teach that using PowerPoint presentations or text in a textbook?
Exactly.
So there's quite a lot of things that's untouched, but very exciting stuff that we're already doing now.
I just want to quick, before we talk about the language,
Yes.
for those of you who might just have joined, Barend is actually wearing an avatar, so he has an overlay on. If you're wondering why his neck looks so thin, then so there's an animation over him. So I want us to also, we spoke about the maths, but this language one is really great also.
Definitely, yeah. So it's added to the tool set for the teachers. So you're not going to use it for the basics. You're going to try and teach the practice of it, and doing it in a very practical way. So in the short clip, you see the interactions are very common. So it's like in a cab or driving in a taxi, and having that interaction with someone in a language that they're comfortable with, maybe you're not so much. But it's that practice that comes into play with virtual reality. I mean, all of the content is very stimulating. It's stimulating your visuals. It's stimulating your auditory. It's stimulating the way that the controls work. So we have to take that into account as well. We don't want to overload a student with initial content by putting them in this completely unfamiliar situation, and then ask them to do basic remembering of things. So
Yes.
it's very much used to delve into a much deeper learning. The way that people learn by remembering, like accessing their memory palace. So, I mean, that's how the savants, or the very well-known people that can remember decks of cards and things like that, they use that as a tool and put certain things in their memory palace. So now, if we can access the content which we learn in that memory palace, the information is a lot easier to remember, because you're going to go back to that visual representation of the information and think, how was it given? How did I receive it? How did I process it? And it becomes a lot easier to learn using virtual reality. Yeah.
I mean, what the studies are also showing in terms of virtual reality is, for example, the laboratory type ones, and you've got a laboratory scenario, but where students are actually experimenting with all sorts of physics type scenarios, can have as many explosions or use as many chemicals as they like. It's not going to add to any more money. But when they get into a real lab, they know how to operate because they've been able to practice. And it's the same with the maths, that you're going in and you're playing again and again and building on that knowledge.
Exactly, yeah. So the same with the biology lab. I mean, normally you would need to, number one, if you start dissecting things, have the thing you want to dissect. So in our case now, the pig. So I know there's the majority of students are very squeamish. So it becomes more of a traumatic experience than anything else to try and cut open something, look at the intestines, and learn from that. Where now it's a lot more controlled. it feels as if you're there, but you don't have to deal with that, in this case, dead thing, which I think takes away, in a sense, from the learning experience. Now, you've got the controls, you've got the headset, you can stop at any point in time, you can access that content, do everything that you need to without there needing to be that thing, which is quite exciting.
And I agree with you that it's really exciting that the children can be doing these learning things without actually putting them into a space where they feel uncomfortable or they're not sure how to handle it. I mean, I'm assuming that one of the first things you would teach children is how to use the technology. So if they're feeling uncomfortable, they could just take it off. Same as if they're feeling dizzy or if they don't feel comfortable. So if we've taught the children how to handle the technology, how to put it on, how to take it off, all those kinds of things, that if they don't want to continue with it and they're feeling too squeamish, they can take it off.
Exactly, yeah. So to jump in now slightly with what you asked earlier about how it works. So the way that we offer this as a service is by educating, number one, not only using the tool to educate, but educating teachers and students about what it feels like. So that's the first step, is to not make them scared of the technology, but empower them with the technology.
Yep.
So we always start off with 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes of an introduction. And that goes through specific games to make it quite fun for them to interact with the content, as well as to learn the controls, to have the headsets on. And then after that, the time has passed, they feel more empowered, and now they're excited to actually access the content. So with this specific device, you can also set boundaries. So you create that safety space which the student or the learner can be in, and once they step out of that, the device actually turns off. So it gives a pass-through feature which allows them to see the outside world, and that makes it also a lot safer, so that they don't bump into things, bump into other students, into objects, or it creates that sense of safety, which I think is also empowering.
Yeah, I think that's vital. And I think within a school space, you could have a space set up where that's all that happens, is a VR kind of scenario. And there are different ways of doing that, whether you have multiple headsets or just one headset with a big screen for others to watch. But because the person is in the VR, they can be engaging with the rest of the class and explaining what they're seeing, or answering questions, or all sorts of things can also be happening from a teaching point of view.
No, definitely. And I think it's important, when it comes to that, and we've seen it quite a lot, is that everybody goes in at some point. So you not only have kids that sit around and laughing at specific students, which sometimes becomes a problem, but everybody's laughing at everybody, and everybody's having a good time. And afterwards, everybody's excited about what they saw and engaging with them, each other, as well as the teacher, about what that content was.
Yeah, that's really, really important. We've got a few more videos that you'd like to, that you've shared. Which one do you want to do? Field trips, or the human anatomy, or space? Which one would you like to discuss or
let's
show?
start with the field trip one. So, I mean, you know as well as I do how complicated it is to get kids into a bus or onto a plane to go and see things. So imagine now putting them in this canyon and having to have them all together and explain the specifics around it. Where would you be able to see such things as what you can see in virtual reality? It truly becomes one of the strongest things, is to fully immerse someone into that. To give you an example, I mean, one of the founding fathers of education in a more natural environment is Sir David Attenborough. So he's doing a lot of content using virtual reality now, where we can teach now with him being a teacher, and the students can enter into the space where they can see how the evolution of the earth has progressed over time. They can go down into under the water and see all of these dinosaurs and all of the fossils and things like that. You would not be able to do that without this technology. So it becomes very, very powerful when it's specifically utilized for this instance. Yeah.
That's very true. In terms of, sorry, I just want to answer Kevin's question. He's saying he's got to jump off. Kevin, you can rewatch all of these. I don't know if you're watching, let's see, from LinkedIn. You'll be able to rewatch just on LinkedIn later. It's not going to be removed. Thanks for hopping in. Chat soon. So if we think about what you were just describing in terms of this total immersive experience and how we can be showing children incredible spaces where we wouldn't be able to take them to, like showing them, as you said, going underground and looking at fossils or archaeological digs and things like that, or up into outer space. I think that's really exciting. I'm going to pop the Apollo 11 video on if you want to share.
Yeah, so I mean, in history, you want to create a sense of presence of being there, and how easy it is to do it now using virtual reality, jumping in, being that captain of Apollo 11, jumping onto the moon and experiencing that for the first time. So it really does become, yet again, an added to what the teachers are already using. You're not going to give them all the content using virtual reality. It has to be that added value to what your teaching method is. So the history and all of the facts will be there, but the student now goes in to experience it. And maybe those facts being shown every now and again then gives them that sense of remembering, oh yes, this is what happened. That's how it felt. So now when they're writing the exams or being tested on the knowledge, now yet again, accessing that specific memory palace and going into that space. Just to pause here for a second, I think it is important that we do talk about how, you can't do it for extended periods of time. There is the sensory overloadness that students does tend to get. So you don't want to also, let's say, start a day off with VR, and now the students are engaging with the content, and the rest of the day they can't actually concentrate because of how tired it made them. So it's very necessary to pick specific points in time to do it, and yet again to elevate the education, their education, by using that tool. So think about being in that spacecraft. You're experiencing it, your heart is racing, you're looking around, you're seeing these things. Maybe you're accessing the actual spacecraft and you have to steer it. Now, we've seen that you really only want to put students within VR for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, I agree.
You don't want to do more than that, as well as, you are looking at a screen. So you don't want to overexpose children or students to bright lights for an extended period of time. So it is very important to be methodical or think about how you want to use this as a tool.
That's very, very true. I mean, we spoke about immersive experiences inside of something like Apollo, but I think things like this with the anatomy are just as exciting, where we're taking children inside the body.
Definitely, yeah. So, in the back you can see there's a timer running and there's a level. So you can either have easy, medium, or hard, and that depends on how complex the system gets. So in this instance, you have to rebuild based on knowledge that you've gained already. And now this becomes your test. You're now testing the knowledge within 360 virtual reality by now having to put this whole thing together. So, without like cutting out small little pieces and sticking them on a piece of paper, you wouldn't be able to create this.
And those plastic models that you get within
Yes.
labs are so expensive. So once you've bought this equipment, you can slowly add the technology to your library of technologies and slowly expose the children to a range of different scenarios.
Exactly, yes. Yeah.
You said something interesting. You said use it as a test. So would the teacher be able to see the results? Is there a back end that the teacher can actually see how children have accomplished? Or once it's done, does it stay within that space?
So there's different ways that you can do this, kind of capturing the moment, if you want to call it, as to use it as a means of grading. So within the device, you can actually do recordings.
Okay.
So you can capture how the student engage with the content, and then afterwards download it and maybe save it on a server. You can also take screenshots after they've completed. Let's say, for instance, in this previous instance, there was a timer. So once they've completed that, take a screenshot of when it was completed and then say, okay, that was my time. So it depends what the model is that you're using to grade. So I think that's also important is, I mean,
yes,
we kind of trying to use old systems to grade, which is using multiple choice, maybe to test knowledge, using time to check how quickly they can get it done. So it's old systems that we're using for new tools to try and assess, but you can definitely use these new tools to assess kind of old school systems. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for that.
Yeah.
I just want to say I've had such fun chatting to you this evening in terms of all the things that you've shared. And thank you too for all the videos, which I think made it really a lot clearer for people to understand or who hadn't seen the VR kind of things before. I think they got a good idea of the kinds of experiences that students would be able to work through. So if somebody contacts you, do you go to the schools? Do they come to you? How does that work?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, and it's very exciting to share a passion with everybody. So the easiest way, so just to explain, we've got this box which basically has all of the tools in it. So it makes it very easy to then move these systems around, and to make it as easy for the schools and the teachers as possible. It helps to go to them rather than having them come to us. So if you go to the website, or if you want to pop an email just to connect, then we can create a custom quote depending on how many devices you would want, or for what period of time you would want to teach using virtual reality, and then we would come to you. So we would do that foundational framework of teaching what the technology is, how to use it, and then access all the content that we already have. So it makes it a lot easier when you can access this just as a tool. Every now and again, go and pick it out of a little toolbox and use it, and book sessions where we can come and facilitate that learning experience, rather than we've seen some people struggle with updating the technology or keeping everything intact and keeping everything charged. So we bring everything as a set system which can just be used, and then we help and facilitate that learning experience. So yeah, if anyone is interested, then just hop onto the website. You can go to the WhatsApp and we can connect directly to me, and I'll by all means give you a custom quote for whatever purposes that you would want to use this technology, and then take it from there. Come and introduce myself, come and show what the technology is about. Yeah.
That's really great. I want to end off just by showing the CPR one, because I think that's so important, and it's sort of where we began this evening. but also that it falls into life skills and life orientation and the kind of skills that you want to show students. So I really think that having this kind of technology is really beneficial in a range of ways to learners, but also to just learning as a whole.
Yeah, no, most definitely. So you can see on the right what the person is actually experiencing from a third person's perspective, and then on the left what he's actually seeing and how he's interacting with the content. So it teaches the basics, which, I mean, for first aid or firefighting or whatever simulation is required, you can actually, yeah, take it to them, and everybody will laugh and everybody would have a good time, but also then have that sense of presence with what the content is that they're engaging with. Yeah, so it becomes very valuable.
So to end off, what would you like to leave with people tonight in terms of MetaVR and using it in their schools?
So I think the biggest thing is to start getting excited about technology. For teachers, this technology is not going to take away your job. It's not going to take your sense of teaching. It is a tool. And if other institutions like higher education or maybe like airlines can access this and use it, then surely normal high schools, primary schools, whatever the case might be, should also be able to use these tools. And empowering the students, because a lot of the jobs that we will see in future will heavily rely on using either augmented or virtual reality. So starting from the baseline and working that student's confidence up to actually leave school with that sense of, I know how to use this as a tool in any job, if that's architectural, if that is a design, they leaving it without, with that sense of like being able to actually use it. So it becomes very valuable, yes.
Oh, thank you. So Barend, I just want to say thank you for your time this evening and for sharing. It's really been great engaging with you. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and also for this opportunity for schools that we can really start getting virtual reality from an immersive point of view into schools in a space where teachers won't have to feel threatened. They can talk to you about the topics that they're teaching, what they're busy doing, and you can say, well, these scenarios could fit that. And I think that's really exciting.
Yes, thank you, Karen. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share this passion.
Oh, no, it's been really great. I'm going to end the session. Thanks, everyone. Good night.